Welcome to Equity Builds Expertise, the podcast. Because whether you teach it or build it, expertise grows where equity leads. I'm Shana Buckner, STEM educator, consultant, author, and the voice behind the Equity Builds Expertise framework. And after years of helping teachers, school leaders, engineers, and technical teams grow their people, I've learned something pretty simple. And that's that classrooms and companies really face some of the same challenges. And it's going to be the same solutions that change everything. So here, we're going to talk about what really builds expertise. We're talking about belonging, access, agency, clarity, communication, and those everyday decisions that actually shape how people think, learn, and collaborate. So if you're committed to growing your people, whether we're talking about students or staff, teachers or engineers, then this is the space for you. So pull up a chair, grab your notebook, and join me as we bridge the worlds between STEM education and STEM industry and build the expertise that truly lasts. This is Equity Builds Expertise, the podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to Equity Builds Expertise, the podcast, because whether you teach it or build it, expertise grows where equity leads. Okay, so in the last episode, we talked about coaching and what it actually looks like to support thinking instead of just delivering answers. Today, we're talking about something that sits underneath all of that. We're talking about confidence. Even more specifically, we're talking about what it takes to act even when confidence isn't there yet. Let's get into it. Great. So let's get started by debunking the biggest myth we tell ourselves. We tell it to ourselves, we tell our students, we tell our teens, and it's what we tell each other about success. So we treat confidence like it is a prerequisite to action. We treat it like it's this magical fuel that you have to put in the tank before you can put the car in drive or something. We think, once I feel ready, I'll raise my hand. Or once I feel confident, I'll volunteer to read or lead that project. Once I know exactly what I'm doing, I'll take the AP class. But here is the absolute truth. When it comes to high challenge spaces, whether we're talking about a rigorous STEM class or a fast-paced tech company or any environment where true expertise is being built, you are never going to feel 100% ready. You're just not. And if you're waiting for the fear of failure to disappear before you make that move, you're going to be waiting forever. We actually have to teach our people how to do it afraid. So I want to start off by taking you back to my classroom. I'm going to take you back to my classroom just for a minute. So when I was teaching 11th and 12th grade environmental science, I made it my personal mission to try to recruit and talk to students who had been historically not placed in not wanting to take the advanced science tracks, right? And I had this one student, let's call her Jalen. Jalen was brilliant. She was perceptive, and she was actually a very, very deep thinker. But she was also incredibly protective of her GPA and her self image. She only played games that she knew she could win, and if she didn't know the answer immediately, she would shrink back, right? Pull herself almost into her hood, right? And make herself invisible in as many ways as she could. At least that's what she tried to do. Our systems made that kind of hard, but she would try to shrink if she could. And when it came time for scheduling, I pulled her aside and I told her that I was starting to use AP environmental science questions on my assessments and my finals even more now. I will never forget the look of sheer panic on her face. She looked at me and said, "Miss Pyatt, no, I am not a science person. I'm not ready for AP, and I don't know the vocabulary. I'm going to fail, and it's going to ruin my transcript, so I don't know if I'm taking this class." She was waiting for confidence. She thought because she felt afraid, it meant that she didn't belong in the room. I looked at her and I said, "Jalen, I'm not asking you if you feel ready. I'm telling you that you are capable. You were going to be scared, you were going to be confused, and you're going to fail a few quizzes probably. But you are going to do it anyway. We are going to do it afraid." And guess what? She did. She sat in the front row, completely terrified. And I would say that the first month was pretty rough. But I had built my classroom on the first pillar of my framework, which is belonging. We operated with a culture of error, a space where it is safe to fail, to take risks, to be wrong without destroying your grade or your spirit. Because it was a safe place to fail, Jalen actually kept trying. She started raising her hand more. She started asking questions. And by the end of the year, this girl who swore she wasn't a science person was actually leading study groups and breaking down some complex data sets for her peers. Doing it afraid is one of my mantras. I wear this bracelet that my daughter gave me because of that. Here is why Jalen succeeded and why your struggling employees or students can actually succeed too. And it's because most people think that the cycle of success goes like this, that it's something like confidence leads to action, which leads to competence. And I'm here to tell you that that's completely backwards. The reality is this: action leads to competence, and competence builds confidence. Action is always first. It always has to come first. Confidence is not the starting line. It is the finish line. And as educators and leaders, our job is not to magically make people feel brave. Our job is to lower the barrier to that very first action so that they can start building the competence that we need them to build. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this doing it afraid coaching protocol. Okay, so how do we actually do this? I actually did a TED talk that discussed this in some ways. So how do we instruct and coach for this kind of bravery? So I want to teach you a specific framework right now. And if if you're driving, just keep your eyes on the road. But if you're at a desk, you should grab a pen because I call this the do it afraid coaching protocol. Wrong bracelet. This one, the do it afraid coaching protocol. So I want you to think of a person that you manage or a student that you teach who may be paralyzed by the need to be perfect. Here are the 3 steps that you're going to take to coach them into action. Remember, the goal is to get them to move towards doing something, taking movement and doing it afraid. So step 1, you need to explicitly normalize the fear. You got to audit the environment that you're in and that you're working in and that you may have created. So you cannot ask someone to do it afraid if your environment punishes mistakes. You have to name the fear out loud and strip it of its power. All right, so here's what it kind of sounds like. Instead of saying, oh, you'll be fine, you've got this, which I have to say is pretty dismissive, by the way, you want to say something more like, this is a really complex project. It is completely normal to feel overwhelmed right now. I actually expect you to get parts of this wrong the first time you do it, but that means you're learning. Hear the difference? Okay, so step 1, you want to normalize that. Step 2, you're going to have to shrink the first step. So when confidence is low, the mountain looks too high to climb. You have to shrink the task until it's small enough that the fear doesn't stop them. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. Let's say if a junior engineer is terrified of presenting to the leadership team, you don't just throw them in front of the vice president and executive team, right? You give them a micro task. Tell them something like this. I don't need you to give the whole presentation. I just want you to present the first 2 slides on the data metrics. I'll handle the rest. We're here to just get your voice in the room. Okay, you see what that is, the difference there? So you let them act in a low stakes scenario so they can build competence. Step 3, praise the process and not the product. When someone does it afraid, you have to acknowledge the attempt, not just whether they got the right answer. Okay, here's what that might sound like. I know you weren't sure about that data set, but I saw you dive in. I saw you apply the formula and try to map it out anyway. Listen, that courage is exactly what I'm looking for on this team. You see that? In that case, you are rewarding the bravery. And once again, the competence is going to follow. I want to be perfectly clear that this isn't just about like teenagers in a high school science lab, right? You can see from what I've just given in some of those examples that classrooms and companies face some of the same exact problems. So whether you're an engineering manager trying to get a brilliant but quiet developer to lead a sprint, or maybe you're a director trying to empower a new team leader to push back in the boardroom or push back in a meeting, the reality is that the barrier is identical. Imposter syndrome is loud, right? That fear of looking stupid is paralyzing. You can't just tell someone, believe in yourself, right? That's a bumper sticker, not an instructional strategy. You have to say to them, I know you're not fully ready. or I know you feel you're not fully ready. I know your voice might shake. I know you might stumble over the explanation. But I want you to know that you have the tools. You belong in this room. And I need you to take this step anyway. Remember, equity is providing the targeted individual support necessary so that someone can meet high standards. It is not lowering the bar, it is removing the internal and external barriers to reach the bar. Sometimes the most powerful, equitable support you can provide is just being the person who believes in them and believes in them out loud, forcing them to take that first messy, unconfident step. We build equity by giving people the tools to access the work. We build expertise by making them practice. We build confidence by forcing them to act before they feel ready and catching them when they stumble. If any of this resonated with you, I hope that you will share this with someone that you are learning alongside, growing alongside, and pushing to take that first step and to do it afraid. Because that's what's necessary for people to actually grow and step into their next. Confidence doesn't come first. Action does. And sometimes it takes just doing the thing before you feel ready. So here's what I want you to sit with. Where are you or the people you're supporting waiting to feel ready instead of just taking the next step? In the next episode now, I'm joined by Tiaja Harley Wiltshire, a former student, and we're going to talk about what it takes to navigate spaces where confidence, communication, and presence all matter. I'll see you there.